Tony Thompson versus Malik Scott. I'm looking forward to this fight. It's the 30th of October that this one's scheduled for. Now, I bet a number of people watching this video probably didn't even know that this fight had been made. It's one that's gone really under the radar. It's one that hasn't been talked about, hyped up a lot. And when I have seen it written about in forums, it's kind of been scoffed at slightly. You know, people are saying that this is Steve Cunningham versus Antonio Tarver 2, that this shows how weak the heavyweight division is, that two guys who are very much in the autumn of their careers and have taken some tough losses are, fighting and etc. I'm inclined to disagree. I actually think that this is a very, very interesting fight. And I think it involves two guys who, in some ways, are underrated. First, let me say that I am a fan of heavyweight boxing that I view as technical, chess playing. I like it when there's a sort of more strategic breakdown behind a fight, as opposed to just saying, oh, this guy punches very, very hard, he's going to be an unstoppable force. Let's talk about these two fighters. Malik Scott. Malik Scott's an easy guy to take the mickey out of, for two reasons. Firstly, because of the Deontay Wilder loss. Three reasons, actually. Firstly, because of the Deontay Wilder loss, where a lot of people suggest he took a dive. Secondly, due to the Derek Chisora loss, where a lot of people say that he quit. He got up too late on purpose. And thirdly, because Malik Scott doesn't punch very hard. He's got a very, very big limit to his punching power. All three of those things, I can't deny that there has to be some doubt over his performances against Wilder and Chisora. I can't deny that he isn't a very, very big puncher. But nevertheless, Malik Scott shouldn't be completely written off. Let me give you two reasons why. He fought Glazkov relatively recently, a couple of fights back. Now, Glazkov is highly rated. A lot of people have Glazkov in their top 5 in the heavyweight division, certainly the top 10. I disagree. I think Glazkov is largely overrated. But if you watch that Malik Scott-Glazkov fight, which was a draw in terms of the decision, I think that most will agree that Malik Scott was the winner that night. Secondly, Malik Scott's last fight was against Alex Leapai. Now, Leapai is another guy who's fringe level. He recently got beaten by Manuel Charr, which kind of says what you need to know. And Alex Leapai is a guy who, he can be outboxed. He was stopped by Kevin Johnson. He was beaten by Charr. But Malik Scott gave him a bit of a hiding, it wasn't like a one-punch knockout display. It went the distance, but Malik Scott sort of beat him from pillar to post for the entirety of the fight and absolutely dominated that fight. My point is that Malik Scott, he's probably never going to be a heavyweight champion of the world. He's not as exciting a prospect as Joseph Parker, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, etc. But if you like your technical boxing, some of the stuff that this guy does is extremely advanced. Some of the punches and combinations that he throws, are a joy to behold. They really are. I remember that Derek Chisora fight, which, by the way, I had Scott ahead in at the time of the stoppage. But some of the combinations he was throwing in that fight were pretty exceptional. Some of the punches that he was finding, the distance he was measuring, the way he was using his jab, the way this guy can move. This guy moves like a light heavyweight, and he's got an active jab. And I like Malik Scott. I think Malik Scott is a really good test for a lot of heavyweights out there. I expect him to lose if he faces the power punch, the mega power punchers, and I expect him to come just sort of top class. But for me, Malik Scott is an interesting heavyweight competitor, and he's certainly someone that right now I would have in my top 30 in the heavyweight division. Tony Thompson is a guy who I rate even higher than Malik Scott. Having said that, Tony Thompson's older on in his career. He's into his 40s. He's probably not in as good a shape as Malik Scott. There are reasons to be dubious over Tony Thompson as he gets to the latter stages of his fighting days. But Tony Thompson is certainly a guy who I rate very highly. I probably still have him in the top 10 of the heavyweight division in my rankings. I find it hard on form alone to rule him out of the top 15. I think anyone who doesn't have him in the top 15 needs to go back and look at some of Tony Thompson's recent form. Who has Tony Thompson actually lost to in recent memory? It's Kubrat Pulev, who most people would say is top 5 of the division. It's Vladimir Klitschko, who clearly is number 1 of the division. And it's Carlos Takam, who I'd rate as top 10 in the division. But again, he's a guy, if you take him just below top 10 level, he's very, very effective. Notice back-to-back wins recently against Odliner Solis. Now, Solis is a guy you can criticise and poke fun at because of his weight, etc. But Solis is a decent operator. And Thompson beat him in back-to-back fights. David Price. Again, David Price doesn't have the sturdiest chin in the world. But nevertheless, Tony Thompson took him on when Price was undefeated, when everyone was saying that Price was the next big thing, just like they're saying about Anthony Joshua now. And Tony Thompson beat him back-to-back, handily, twice. You know, my point is, Tony Thompson shouldn't be underrated. He's a very wily, skilled, intelligent boxer. And there's a number of guys in the heavyweight division, a number of young guys who are running through opponents who would be given all they could handle by Tony Thompson. So, I like this fight. You know, neither of these guys has amazing punching power. Both of them are probably more what I would class as chess players. And I think that this could be an intriguing fight for hardcore purists who enjoy the technical side of heavyweight boxing. I actually find it really, really hard to make a decision in this fight. Because whilst I think Tony Thompson should be the favourite based on his wins over David Price and Odliner Solis, he's certainly the guy who's beaten the better named fighters. He's certainly the guy who has performed consistently at the higher level. Stylistically, I don't rule Malik Scott out, because I think Malik Scott can be a more active, busier fighter than Tony Thompson. You know, Tony Thompson is quite low output, and I think where he's maybe had some success in recent years is when he's been facing guys like Odliner Solis, who have been so overweight they've become low output. Or when he's been facing guys like David Price, who have been very, very easy to take out. And there certainly is a chance that Tony Thompson could take out Malik Scott, because we've seen before in fights when pressure has really, really built, such as in the Chisora fight or in the Deontay Wilder fight, that Malik Scott is the kind of guy you can take out. So I don't rule out the Thompson knockout, but I wonder what sort of shape is Tony going to turn up for in this fight. He's not getting any old. He's not getting any younger. Some of the challenges he's had throughout the course of his career, it's going to be hard for him to get overly motivated for Malik Scott, who's an opponent who you could possibly say Tony should be beating. And I just wonder, as Tony gets older, will Malik Scott have the output to beat him? I think Malik Scott on the night is going to be the more athletic individual. I think he's going to be moving better than Thompson. I think his jab is going to be more active than Thompson. And I think he's probably going to have a wider variety of punches than Thompson. For that reason, I'm slightly inclined to lean with Malik Scott. You know, Thompson's a hard guy to work out in fights. When he fought Kubrat Pulev, I gave Thompson several of the early rounds in that fight. When he fought Vladimir Klitschko first time round, I gave him several of the early rounds in that fight. Thompson, he's a southpaw, he's awkward, he's tricky as hell. You know, he knows this game inside out. Thompson is the kind of guy who can take an early lead in fights just because guys struggle to adapt to him. But Malik Scott is an equally adept chess player, in my opinion, and he's someone who will look at a fight and read a fighter. I think the key to this fight is very much Tony Thompson's conditioning when he turns up. If Thompson turns up in shape, fully motivated, he should win this fight. I think he's a slightly higher level operator than Scott. I think his game is more complex and there's more depth to it. But I just wonder, with Tony getting into his 40s, coming early to mid-40s now, and with him showing up to fights in not the best shape, is he going to be able to live with a guy like Malik Scott, who can fight for the duration of the fight, and who can move, and who can pep you with the jab consistently? I think we'll be able to predict the winner of this fight when we see them on the scales. And if Tony Thompson is showing that he has gone downhill from when he fought Solis and David Price, and let's be honest, at times that was bad enough. If he's gone further downhill from those days, I'm picking Scott. If he turns up looking like he's trained hard and that he's in condition, I think Thompson. But I do see this as a 50-50 fight. And whilst fights like this tend to fly under the radar, when I see two heavyweights who I rate, I rate Malik Scott probably 25 to 30. I rate Thompson probably 8 to 15. When I see two guys in that sort of bracket, fighting against each other in the heavyweight division, I take an interest. You know, this kind of fights that I'm intrigued by and that I like to see. The winner of this fight, don't be surprised if the winner of this fight gets a big matchup. You know, let's be honest, Deontay Wilder's been known to pluck people out of obscurity for a voluntary challenge. Could you rule out Deontay Wilder versus Tony Thompson? Certainly not. Could the winner of this fight be used as an opponent for an up-and-comer, an Anthony Joshua, a Joseph Parker? Possibly. Maybe not immediately. Maybe those guys need another fight or two before getting to this stage, but possibly. The winner of this fight maintains some relevancy, and I think it's an intriguing matchup. Malik Scott points, I'm going with. If Tony turns up in great shape, Tony KO, maybe even Tony points. The one thing that we can certainly say is that Malik Scott will not be knocking out Tony Thompson. Let me know your thoughts on this fight. How do you see it? Who are you picking? And is it a fight that interests you? Many thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. Thanks very much.